Welcome back and welcome to another event vlog. Here I am in the beautiful Cotswolds on my way to an event in Waterstones Cheltenham with the lovely Millie Johnson, Penny Parkes and Veronica Henry, and I thought I would take you with me, so here is the footage from that event.
For many years I was a greetings card writer, a joke writer, which was brilliant. So some of the jokes that I have sold to put food in my children's mouths, etc., probably we should gloss over. It was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had, although it was the kind of silver medal for me, because this was the job I always wanted, to write books. It was my gold medal job. Never really wanted to do anything else but this, and it just goes to show really what you can pull out the hat when you really want to. So my advice to anybody here, if they have a dream in their heart, then they should, and it's attainable, i.e. not to be kind of George Clooney's fluffer. It's not attainable though, is it, to be fair? You should go for it, really, because I think we're all living our dream jobs here, and sometimes there's no joy in a comfort zone. You have to push yourself, and I'm very happy to be. I can die an author. That's what I wanted to be able to say on my grave. I died an author. Hopefully not yet. But that was always my ambition, to die an author. So I think I can manage that one. So thank you very much.
I'm Penny Parkes. I live in the Cotswolds, and hello. I also had that kind of, I'd love to write a book, to the point that I bored everybody for like 2 decades. One day, I'd love to write a book one day. And instead I just used to read an awful lot of books, including books by these two lovely ladies. And I used to find other ways to sort of deal with the creative issues that I obviously clearly at some point had. So I used to go and find film locations and locations for magazine shoots all around the Cotswolds, everywhere. Lots of lovely travelling, lots of lovely adventures. But when it came down to it, if you asked me what I wanted, this has got a bit dark, on my obituary, I just wanted to walk into a bookshop and physically hold a book in my hand with my name on it. And so there was very much a kind of a moment where the kids had started school, I'd run out of excuses, and I either had to actually sit down and write the book that I'd been talking about for a long time, or stop talking about it. In fact, that was the ultimatum set down at home, which was very much, Penny, write the bloody book or stop talking about the bloody book. So actually that was brilliant, because it gave me a little bit of a kick and a motivation. And just to make it a little bit tweakier, they said, look, give it a year. And so I managed to secure an agent on my 364th day, because I believe in doing it under the wire. and I kind of said to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I had a book out before I was 40? And again, just under the wire. So so this book, the one behind me, is in fact the 3rd book, and I've just handed in the 4th one. So I'm very much coming from behind, but I'm learning from the best. So that's me.
I'm Ronnie, Veronica, if I'm in trouble. Always a bookworm as a child, army brat, so never got too attached to anybody because we'd be moving, so books were my friends, bookshops were my friends, libraries. You walk into a bookshop and it's pretty much the same universally wherever you are. It starts at A, ends in Z, and it was kind of my safe place. Got thrown out of university, did a secretarial course, and then went to work. My first job was typing scripts for the Archers. Have we got any Archers fans here? And that's kind of when I was introduced to the notion of, not introduced to the notion of storytelling, but when I realised it was a job and that's what you could do with your life. And I realised then that everybody needs an escape, everybody needs to switch off. And I was working, I was in Ambridge, and all across the country people were turning on at 7:05, which was when it went out in those days, and were just taken somewhere else for 15 minutes, and I thought, that's crucial, and that's what I want to be a part of. And I worked for somebody really amazing who was a fantastic storyteller, who then went to work in television, so I kind of went with him, became a script editor, so learned my craft in television, And then when I was expecting my first baby, script editing and babies do not go. Television is basically one of those crazy worlds where nobody actually gives birth or has something to go back home to. You're basically supposed to stay there until you fall over drunk at midnight in the bar. So I just thought, that's not going to work. So I jumped over the fence and I wrote scripts for about 10 years, but always wanted, books were my first love. I kind of always felt a bit of a fraud because when everybody was sort of analysing how 30-something worked and were passionate about analysing every character and every storyline, I just thought, you know what, I don't really care about 30-something, but I do care about the new John Irving novel or whatever. And I just thought, I'm not in the right place here. And to cut a very, very, very long story short, I kind of jumped over yet another fence and was really lucky to get, it was back in the day when, was it easier? I don't know. Everybody seems to be getting book deals now. Everybody seems to be writing a book. Anyway, I did get a book deal and I'm now embarking upon my 20th novel, which makes me feel super old. Either that or I just write fast, I don't know.
Have you ever wanted to change genre?
Oh, shall we go? Yeah, that's a really interesting question because it's sort of endemic at the moment. Everybody, a lot of people who aren't being as successful as they want to be in the genre that they're writing in kind of think that they will change from, say, romantic fiction to thrillers. And a lot of people have done it. A lot of people do have two hats, two genres. And some people do it with success and some people don't. I'm not allowed to write dark. I don't know about you, Millie or Penny. I'm just not allowed to go too dark in my novels, and sometimes I want to.
Because life is in the margin.
Life is dark.
Very funny, but too dark.
Yeah, life is dark. So sometimes I do feel the urge to write something really. But I kind of think, do you know what? I bring pleasure to people and I make them smile, and that is a lovely thing to be able to do. Make them smile, give them a bit of an escape, and I don't want to say the word happy ending because. Not always appropriate. Yeah, a happy ending. So
it's escapism, though, isn't it? It's like off to your lovely beach hut. And
exactly.
The whole world
That's what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't have time to dabble in murder. So occasionally I just think, oh, for God's sake, yes, I want to write a really, dark, torrid, passionate, but wrong scene. But yeah. No, I've got to pay the bills, so I haven't got time to change. Yeah.
Because actually, my natural sense of humour does occasionally veer off piste a little bit towards the darker end of the spectrum, and my lovely editor Jo will just very quietly just bring me back to the
spanking.
No, not like that. Just a little bit more sort of dry, a little bit more possibly sarcastic than is actually funny to a lot of people, whereas it amuses me no end. The nice little chuckle to myself on the train. But if anything, I'd probably be very happy where I am. But if I had to change, I'd go more kind of quirky.
Yeah.
Like my favourite film is a film called Saving Grace, which is about this lovely lady. Brenda Blethyn. And that has everything for me. And maybe one day I'll kind of take myself off for a couple of months and try and write something a little bit darker, a little bit quirkier. But actually at the moment, what I'm writing is exactly what I need, which is a little bit of escape. And hopefully, the sort of the light and funny side to the deep and meaningful stuff. Because I'm a firm believer when it comes to doctors, you have to have the humour, otherwise how would you cope? So I still get to play with the funny, just not quite there. Yeah.
And I'm very dark. My editor has to strip at least 2 murders out of every one of my books. She does leave 5 in, which is all right. And I am writing a crime book.
Are you?
Yeah, I am. Because my natural propensity is towards crime. Doing it as well as writing about it. But I do love what I do, and I'd be an idiot to throw that away. So I just want to kind of, I don't know, get this out of me, because because he has to strip so many murders out. I just think I'm going to split myself in two.
Take all the thrown away murders.
Yeah, I just do that and let myself, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm working with this copper who kind of So no, that wasn't work. And it's going back to the beginning again. It's a totally different way of writing. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's like a palate freshener.
And better to write it than do it.
Yeah, it's I don't know, the research.
That's how the blood comes out.
Yeah, but the best thing, and I don't know if this is why I'm doing it, is just to have another name. You know, because obviously I can't write it under that, because you can't, because people expecting you back yourself into a corner when you've written a few books, because people expect, you know, that if you picked up an Agatha Christie and it was like a Mills and Boon, you just wouldn't want it, because you kind of got a duty of care to your readers. So I need a different name. So I'm walking around the house saying to the kids, do I look like an Alana? And they're going, just let it drop. So I don't know if that's why I'm doing this, just to get this other personality. One of these glam names that I've always wanted, like Sistine or something like that. Sistine.
That sounds like something you might
English
go to the
doctor. Sylvester Stallone's daughter's called Sistine. I think it's the sexiest name on this planet, you know. But then you've got, again, you look at Sistine, you think, no, somebody with the name Sistine would be writing some kind of CAD file mystery, you know.
Yeah.
So it's got to be the right name. But yeah, I would. But I wouldn't
we can
change.
sort it out for later, Mills.
Yeah, we'll sort it out over a couple of glasses. But I don't think I would change. I think I would do that as well, just to excise it. But I would be idiots not to. You know, when you're doing okay,
Yes,
when you're
exactly.
doing all right, you don't want to. You know, you wouldn't want to chuck it all up.
Also, I think when you're writing, there's a sort of little bit of a creative part of your brain just humming away in the background, even when you're doing the most mundane everyday tasks. And it doesn't always throw out what you're expecting it to. So quite often you'll be writing a character and they'll misbehave, sometimes in a better way than you planned originally, but you can't always guarantee that they're going to be on theme or on message. So there's always the other path, you know, that you could have
Go in a
taken.
little drawer.
Yeah, and then
Dark
you'll go in a
path.
notebook
Dark
for
side.
later. Right. What is the most exciting part of the writing a book process? Would you like me to go while you have a think?
You know, I think I can manage. Because I write in layers. You know, I don't edit my first draft. I just kind of fling it at and I think there's quite a few exciting bits in this process. But for me, it's the second draft. The first draft is a pain in the butt. I don't know where I'm going with it. I'm glad to get to the end of it, and then I've got a nice big body of work that I can pat into shape. It's a bit like kind of throwing a load of clay at something. You've got a basic shape, but the second edit for me, that's the exciting thing. And I mean, it's lovely to see your covers and everything like that, and lovely to sit on a shelf. But creatively, that second draft is when it all starts to take shape, and you pat it into a timetable, and you kind of enrich all your language. And to me, it's that second draft. I know a lot of people kind of edit as they go along, but I can't do that, because I'd end up just being stuck ad infinitum on that first chapter, refining it. But the second chapter to me is where all the magic happens, if it's ever going to happen at all. It's there. So that's my magic point. That's when it's exciting for me. I've got a big body of work, something to pat into shape. Okay.
See, I think it's different as you go along. So with my very first book, it was holding said book, you know, proper paperback in a bookshop, my name on it, holding it. There isn't a feeling like that in the world. And now as I go along, it's more, so I have a plan when I start. I'm looking at Joe sideways. I have a plan when I start, so I kind of know I'm driving to Scotland, so I know I'm heading north. And I know various points along the way, but I don't necessarily know what's going to happen in between. And suddenly, normally at about 50,000 words, I go, oh, this is what it's about, which you would think I would know at the outset. But it's more, again, with the layers, because you kind of know structurally this, and this is what's going to happen. I'll quite often have a theme in mind as well. But then there'll just be like a little light bulb moment. And it's normally when you've got into your stride and you're writing, and again, your characters aren't necessarily doing what you planned for them to do, and they've taken on a life of their own. and that's when you lose time. You literally, time stops, because you sit down to write, and suddenly 5 or 6 hours have gone by, and hopefully you haven't forgotten to pick up the children, which has never happened. But it's just, it takes on a life of its own, and that's my favourite bit now. That's the bit. So I'm literally about to sit down and start writing a new one, and I'm already really excited because I can't wait to get to that point. But I know that I can't force it, otherwise it won't happen. Which sounds a bit flaky, but I think if you force it, it doesn't happen, does it? I'm looking at Joe going, tell me, Joe, tell me. Joe's our editor, he's sitting over there. So every time we misbehave, you'll see us looking that way going, don't tell us off.
Oh, I love the beginning, when it's all perfect and nothing's gone wrong. And it's the most genius work of fiction ever conceived. No, I love that beginning bit. I always start with a place. Location is my thing, because I always want to take my readers somewhere where I'd like to be. So I start with a place, and then obviously a setting does not a story make, by the way. So it has to. Then I start the kind of through the keyhole bit. You know, that Lloyd Grossman, who lives in a house like this, and that's kind of fun. Inventing them all and working out what influence they have on each other's lives, and naming people's fun, because they sort of they either come with their names and they're just a Jasper or a Mick
Tarquin.
Or whatever, you know, or you just think, I don't know who this person is yet, and that name's not right, that name's not right, and suddenly you think of a name and then their character just goes. It's bizarre, but I love that part of the process. So the beginning I like, because it's my Blue Peter bit as well, when I'm cutting things out of magazines and just playing a bit, because we're all under such pressure to produce a book a year, and really once you've started you can't let up. You know, you've got to write a certain amount of words a day, and you can't mess around. So it's really lovely to just indulge yourself and think about what your book is going to feel like and smell like, and what it's going to evoke. Yeah, so that's the fun bit for me, really. And then the hard work starts. And that's
Do you have like a scent?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I always have signature scents for my characters. I spend a lot of time in Harvey Nichols. So. No, not that one.
It's definitely
Yeah,
research.
sometimes you can sort of, just something. I like to engage all of the senses when I write. Yeah, so yes, that's the fun sort of crafty fun bit before. And then, you know, you have all these glittering ideas about what's going to happen, and then you try and make it work, and it's a bit like grabbing a butterfly and then pinning it through the heart onto a you know, it's sort of like, oh.
Perfectly Imperfect Woman. It is about, I'll tell you where it came from, first of all. I was at university with this lass. I really liked her, but when you look back at yourself when you're younger and you think, oh God, so embarrassing, you know. And we caught up with each other like you do on Facebook at this age. Everybody sort of splits up. And then when you're about 50, everybody starts coming back and saying, well, no, what nice to see. What you doing? And this lass contacted me and said, oh God, I didn't contact you. I was such a dick at uni. And I went, no, you weren't. You were lovely. I was a dick. And she went, we had this. Oh no, you weren't. You were lovely. And I thought, do you know what? Isn't it odd how hard we are on as especially women? I think on ourselves. We kind of think that we are just a mass of our own mistakes, whereas you don't judge anybody as harshly as you do yourself. And that kind of flared up this story about this woman who makes all these mistakes in life. She's actually a really nice woman, but she thinks she's just a mass of her own mistakes, and that was my starting point. My setting came from a friend of mine sent me a cutting from a Yorkshire Post that said it was about if I'd have written this story and it hadn't been based on facts, it would have been too difficult for people, I think, to grasp and think, oh, this is taking fiction a bit far. But it was a privately owned village that came up for sale in Yorkshire for 20 million quid. And the old lady that had it was charging people a peppercorn rent and she, you know, I said 20 million quid. And she sent it to me and I said, oh, that's a nice story. She sounded like a great book. And I thought, you know. But it started to grow a seed. And sometimes you don't even realise it's doing that until you start and you're trying to eject it from your brain, and it'd already taken root. So I wrote this story really about this this privately owned village, and this old lady who owns this village. And into my story comes this woman who makes a monumental mistake in her life, and she lives in a city. And then they meet on an internet chat room talking about cheesecakes. When you write books, you always kind of have to think about the promotional activity surrounding it. And I did a book about afternoon teas, and everywhere I went there was an afternoon tea waiting for me. So obviously I thought cheesecakes, and it's worked really well. My next book is about gin. And so all the kind of forces combined, and I wrote this story about this woman who sort of like turns up at this village. And that's really what it's about. It's about accepting, really, that it's okay to be perfect. I think as women, it's certainly a lot easier to give advice than it is to take it. And it's about what to do if you feel really that you're out of your depth, and how we should just treat ourselves a bit more kind. Be kinder to ourselves, and treat us as people really like we would treat our best friends, because we are really all we've got, and we are very unkind to ourselves. So that's where it came from. It's about a village in Yorkshire, about a woman who is a mass of mistakes and needs to be a bit kinder to herself, and there's a lot of cheesecake. they're the bits of my book, so that's what it's about.
I love that, really, because just after I got divorced, a woman that I really admired, a friend of my parents, she'd been divorced for a long time, and she came up to me and she said, "Be kind to yourself," and I just didn't know what she meant, and I do now. It's going to make me cry.
Yeah.
And it is really, I think it comes at a certain age as well, and certain things happen to you, and I think you're really right. Treat yourself like you would treat your family.
Especially if you've not had a lot of love in your life, because you haven't got a good template for it.
I'm sure you have to, because you're amazing.
Well, I have, but as I say, you're very hard on you. You are your own worst critic.
It's always easier to believe the bad stuff too. Like we have a little kind of running joke about, if you get a dodgy review, it's quite fun to click on the person's profile. Be warned if you do leave reviews, because then we can see everything else you've bought and reviewed, and it gives you real insight into the person. So poor disappointed Alan, who was my very first bad review, and I'll never forget him, he was very upset about some of my characters, so I clicked on his, and he also felt that Jane Austen was very one-dimensional and predictable. So I was just well, Alan, honestly. Although what was really cheering is he actually left a really lovely review for my third book, so no matter how disappointed he was in me, he committed at this point. And I think actually that meant more, really, that I'd won him round. Poor sad Alan. But anyway, it's just easier to focus on the negative ones rather than the glowing ones. But anyway, I can't reach behind me, so someone throw me a book.
There you go.
My pretzel days are over. So this is Best Practice, which is set in my completely fictional Cotswold market town called Larkford, which is always in my head, if you can imagine, the love child of Bath, Broadway and Cirencester. So I've got my fictional town, and realistically what I wanted was it to feel like a real community, actually, to feel like the kind of community that I've always been looking for, where everybody does know what everyone else is doing, but not necessarily in a negative way. And really we focus around the GPs in Larkford and the doctor's practice, and as you can imagine, there are a few sort of issues with that, because your friends are also your neighbours, are also your patients, so you possibly know more about somebody than you might wish to. You might have seen more of somebody than you might otherwise have wished to. And in this book, really, I wanted to think about community, but I wanted to think about love in all its forms, because for me it's lovely to have a romance, and it's lovely to have a happy ending, and it's lovely to have people fall in love, but love is also about friendship, and it's about support. It doesn't necessarily need to be between two people of the same age. Certainly Holly, my GP, and Elsie Townsend, our resident celebrity, who is trouble on legs basically, isn't she? There's sort of 40-50 years between them, but nevertheless their bond is really strong. And in this book, Holly is moving towards getting married, and actually that calls into issue the friendship between Taffy and Dan, who are the two male doctors there. And I've often kind of joked and said they've got their own bromance going on, actually, but really the bond between them is as strong as any relationship anywhere else. But the minute you throw a wedding into the mix, it starts, pulling on other strings, doesn't it? So I've said earlier on about how I believe humour is really important, particularly in a sort of difficult setting where sometimes, a bad day really is a bad day. And so I wanted to explore how all of those different relationships changed. So with this one, I always like to sneak behind the scenes. I blame the film location bit, really, because I'm just inherently nosy. So with this one, I really want to sneak behind the scenes and look at some of the medical services that we all completely and utterly take for granted. So we all think if we're having a baby that there will be maternity services for us, or if we have a car crash that there will be an air ambulance with our name on it waiting to whisk us to the appropriate hospital. And I wanted to talk about what would happen if that wasn't the case, because sadly these days with various budget cuts and things, that really isn't the case. And where we live, I don't know if you know, we're in the middle of an area that's covered by the Great Western Air Ambulance charity. I say charity because that's what they are, they're not funded. And every year they need quite a lot of money just to keep going. And this is their 10th anniversary year, which was actually one of those happy circumstance type things, because I'd already written most of the book when I discovered that. So I like to go behind the scenes, see what happens, see what works, and explore what happens when it doesn't work. And to look at sort of the perception versus the reality, if you like. Cotswold life you would think would be all sort of beautiful glossy magazine spreads and Cotswold stone and honeyed, cottages, and isn't it beautiful? And yes, it is, except that life goes on, and relationships fall apart, and accidents happen, as we see in some of the opening chapters of this particular book. And I get to revisit lovely Coco. So I do have some characters that I'm slightly emotionally involved in. Elsie's one of them. Coco, the assistant's dog, is another. She's a chocolate-coloured Cocker Spaniel. And I'm in love with Coco completely. And Alice, Dr. Alice Walker, is her owner/partner. And again, perception versus reality. Everybody knew that sort of Alice had issues because she had this assistant's dog, but to everybody else it looked as though her world was perfect, and she was glossy and beautifully dressed and always perfectly presented. But I get to explore her world where her emotional baggage isn't just metaphorical, shall we say. So yeah, it's just a dive in. Bit of light and dark.
Brilliant.
Where's yours?
It's here. So, as I said earlier, I always start with the location, and this is set in Bath. I went to school in Bath, a really, really hideous Gothic monstrosity that was like Hogwarts without the charm, and it was really traumatic, and I just spent endless weekends getting into trouble in order to get myself expelled, which I managed to do in the end. But we used to run off and run into Bath a lot. We weren't supposed to, so I got to know it quite well, but just swore that I'd never wanted to go there again, ever, ever, ever. But of course, now I'm a grown-up, I realise how gorgeous and charming and beautiful Bath is. So I thought, right, I'm going to go for it. This is going to be my Bath novel. So I started off with a lovely sort of 5-storey classic Georgian bath house, but had to do the Lloyd Grossman thing, who lives in a house like this. And as I was sort of researching the architecture and just how Bath is laid out, I realised that it was heavily bombed during the war. There was a blitz in Bath over 2 nights, and I don't know if any of you know that. I was really ashamed that I wasn't totally aware of that. But it sort of immediately got those creative juices flowing, and I thought, oh, that's fantastic. I really want to explore a family that's been affected by that. And I watched lots of, there's still some survivors, and I saw in the newspaper every year this little group of survivors gets smaller and smaller. I think there's only a few left now, but they go to the park every anniversary of the Blitz. And I just wanted to write about a friendship that had survived not only the Blitz but all of these years, and about 2 women that were still friends. So I decided I was going to write 2 timelines, partly set in the Blitz, of a young girl who loses her parents, and then takes that house and sort of takes people in and the old Blitz spirit. And then we sort of fast forward to to now to her granddaughter who's living in the house, and she's about to face the sort of whole empty nest thing, which is a thing that interests me, being of that age, the sort of total panic and what on earth do I do with my life? You know, we spend, when children are small, we think, oh my God, I just want to go to Barcelona for the weekend. Of course you can't. And then when that day arrives when you could actually spend 3 weeks in Barcelona, but it suddenly becomes completely meaningless. It's a very poignant and terrifying thing, and I wanted to explore, without being sort of mawkish and negative about it, I wanted to explore what somebody does at that time in their life, but further compounded by the fact that her husband's shagging somebody else. So it's like double trouble, and the thing that links the two stories is, I don't know if anybody else has got one of these dear little boxes that have got family recipes in, like little index cards, and I've got one of those that's been sitting in our kitchen ever since I was a little girl, and it's got recipes from both of my grandparents, my parents, me, just a sort of big mishmash, and it's kind of like it's a historical thing that kind of captures everything that's happened to our family over the, I don't know, years and years and years and years, and I just thought, oh, that's perfect, that's the thing that's going to hold it all together. So we see when that recipe box begins during the war, and Jilly, the sort of matriarch, uses the recipes to kind of keep the household together, and then 50 years later Laura uses it to relaunch herself into the world and take revenge.
So, I think you quite like the cooking though too.
Oh, I love cooking, yeah, there's always loads of food in my books. Endless amounts of
You literally, after
food.
every chapter, you're like, I'm hungry. I don't know why I'm hungry.
Well, thank you very much to those wonderful authors and Waterstones Cheltenham for that fabulous event. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed so that my next video lands in your subscription feed. And I will see you with that next video soon. Bye.